In this demo, we'd like to implement a simple project which will demonstrate how to deserialize objects with Camel. We'll start by creating a new project, so let's go and create a new project. I'm using the Eclipse IDE, which has installed the JBoss tools for Eclipse and also the JBoss integration stack, which comes with a Fuse project templates. So I will start by creating a new Fuse project, and I will add the project to the default workspace. Let's say I will implement the project in Java, so I'll create a Camel project which uses Java domain-specific language. I will call my the artifact that's going to be created by the project. I'll use as group ID the group demo, and the artifact ID would be Camel minus formatting. Okay, so the version should be this one. That's fine. Okay, I will create a project, and it's going to be generating with Maven a project that contains, okay, it's still building the project. So as you can see, I have here the Java sources. So now I have my application and I have my route builder. Okay, I will just do my simple project with this. But first of all, I will go to my preferences in order to adjust the font. Sorry for having to do that with you. Okay, so I will just basically I would like to go to the basic font, and okay, 18 should be fine. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, and now as you can see here, my project is creating an application and it's defining a route that's headed to the application. So my route, basically what it does, it's just reading, it's listing on a directory, and it's depending on an XPath expression, it's routing to a specific target location. I don't need that. Basically what I'd like to do would be to have a folder in which I will put files in different formats, and I will deserialize that to an object class. Okay, so first of all, let's create our model. So I'll just go in here and I will create a new class that will be my model. Let's call it person. And the class person, okay, sorry, just a second. The class person would have a simple private string property for the first name, and of course the same string property for the last name. It's going to be a simple model. Okay, with this model I would like to be able to deserialize a person from different formats. So let's start by first of all generating the getters and setters. I'll go to the source and I will generate my getters and setters. That will be the last member in the class, and I will select all also getters but setters as well. Okay, so now that I have my model, I would like to be able to define how this should be deserialized. Okay, so first of all, I would like to show you how to use JXB support in a Maven project, which it's used by Camel. So if I go to the project object model file here, okay, I'm just trying to edit the file. In here, as you can see, I have a bunch of dependencies, and this is the version of the runtime that's installed. I would like to define a property in here and just use this property. So let's create a camel.version property with this value. And now I go to the dependency and I add the properties of the dependency, and instead of using the hard-coded value, I will just point it out to my version. Okay, but then I'll just copy this. Okay, and now I'll edit the test as well and change the value to be this one. Okay, but then I said that I would like to use JXB. So first of all, I will add a new dependency with the group ID org.apache.camel. The artifact ID should be camel.jxb. Sorry for misspelling that. And the version will be a camel.version. Now when I save, it will build my project and it will drag all the dependencies from the Maven repository. Now I'd like also to use the support for deserializing JSON objects. In order to do that, but also in order to leverage my JXB implementation, I will add a new dependency to an artifact which comes also from Camel Apache, from org.camel.apache. Yeah, you know it is org.apache.camel. The artifact ID should be camel minus Jackson, and this would be the implementation for the deserializer that will handle the JSON format. I would like also to be able to use the CSV format, so I'll add a dependency to org.apache.camel. The artifact ID should be camel minus CSV and with the same version. This will need a library to implement the CSV parser, the binder itself, so I will add a new dependency to org.apache.camel. The artifact would be camel minus bindy, which is able to handle fixed format but especially CSV. And because I would like to output the deserialized object to the console, I will need to add a dependency for the stream library in order to do that. So it takes a while to build the dependencies, as you can see here. And in the meantime, I will just add the new dependency I need. So this would be with the same group ID, and I import the stream library in order to output to the console. And now I save my project and it will build it again. Okay, let's come back to our model. So first of all, that's a simple model, that's for sure. I'm just pointing out how to do the formatting with Camel. I will need to first to map my model and to define some annotations, to use some annotations, sorry. Because I'm going to use Jackson to deserialize with JXB, I will need to say that my model should be extracted from an XML root element. Okay, so an XML root element which should be of name, with a name, let's say person. Okay, that's one aspect. Okay. Now the second thing I like to do would be to say that my XML formatter should be using as accessor type, come on, XML accessor type, the field itself and not the property. So it will set the value directly into the field and it will get its value from within the field. Now I need to specify what properties should be serialized from my object. So I will just use this as an attribute, and let's say that my attribute will be called first name. If I don't specify the name of the attribute, it will be the name of the field, which in my case is the same. And I will then map this field to the last name attribute. Okay? And with this, I'm able to deserialize an XML, but also a JSON. Now, I also said that I need to use the CSV format for my class. Okay? So, in order to do that, I will need to annotate my class as being a CSV record. The CSV record needs to set some properties, like the separator, the one that will be the delimiter of the values inside the record, and I will just use the comma as the delimiter. Now, because I'm not running on Windows, that's obviously an OS 6, I will say that the end of the line should be of Unix style. Okay, and that's what I have to do in order to say that this is going to be deserialized as a CSV record. Second step, I need to define which of my fields are gonna hold data. So this would be a data field, and for each data field I need to set a position. So this would be the first record, while this one would be the second. Okay, sorry for having a Windows keyboard with my virtual machine. Okay, so in here I would say that this would be a data field as well, with the position 2. Okay, having done that, I need to define my route. So I go to my route builder, and inside my route I would just need to read a particular folder. So let's say that in here, in my project, I would create a data folder. So I will create a new folder called data, and in my folder I will put some files with an extension according to the format in which the data are stored in the file. So first of all, I will create a consumer endpoint. So I will just use the file adapter in order to listen the directory, and because the path is relative to the structure of the project, I will just read data from files, from the data folder. As soon as the file would be created in the folder, the listener of the adapter will be activated, and of course the route will be executed. I don't want to basically what the file adapter does would be to consume the file, to read the file, but also to delete it. So it will put the file into the route, but it'll erase the data from the disk. So I don't like to do that. So now I just say that this is an option saying do no operation with this file. This means don't delete the file. Okay. Now, when the adapter will read the data from the file, it will just create a message and an exchange with the message, but the object that's going to be created will be a string. So I won't be able to get the content of the file unless I read it. So first of all, what I will do would be to convert the body of the message to a type. In case I will convert the data to a string, then I will just read all the content of the string. Okay? And now I'd like to do a routing based on the extension of the file. So I will just do a choice, and the choice is a processor that admits conditions that's going to be evaluated by a when clause. So now I say when, and I need to express my condition, because I will do the routing based on the header basically based on the extension of the file, I will use the header expression, which is inherited from the router builder. And with the header, I can say when the value of the header with the name that I'm going to write in here equals to a particular constant value, then route my message to a direct processor. Okay, so from the documentation of the file adapter, I see that the extension is held inside the property in the header called file name. And what I would like to do would be to check if the name of the file ends with a value. In my case, with the value CSV.csv. If so, this means I have a CSV file in here. Then I would like to route my processing, my context to a direct endpoint. Let's call it process CSV. Okay, and this is gonna be what I will do for the CSV files. With the same approach, I will just copy this just to spare you from having to see me writing all of this. But in the case the extension would be, let's say, XML, I would write it to the appropriate processor for the XML files. Okay, but then if the extension would be, let's say that I will use JSON extension for the JSON, I will route it to an endpoint to process JSON files. Okay, so I also can have, let's say, a proprietary format, and in case none of the values are matched by the extension of the file, so otherwise I will just process the message with a bean, and I will use my person class in order to deserialize the object, but I will do that with a parse method. Okay, so what this will do would be to call the parse method in order to deserialize the object. Okay, and then after parsing the object, I will redirect the message to an endpoint just to display the result. So I will call an endpoint which will be a direct endpoint to display result. Okay, so this should be display result. Now the problem is that for each producer endpoint that I have, I need to define a consumer in order to consume the data. Okay, so how to deserialize a CSV? So from the endpoint, come on in here, from the endpoint, direct process CSV. Okay, what I need to do, I would like to deserialize a CSV. So I will call the processor called unmarshal to deserialize the object. And because it's a CSV, I will use bindy, and bindy needs to be instructed what type of object I have. So I have a CSV. As you can see here, it can work with key value pairs, fixed or CSVs. And the type will be not persona, but person.class. Now that I have the object deserialized, I will just output the result. So I will just send it to the same endpoint in order to display the data, to display the object. Now, from the second processor, it doesn't have to be necessarily in the same order I defined here, but just not to forget about it. So from the producer, which reads the XML files, I would like to do the same, except that I will use an unmarshaller processor. So I will just do in here an unmarshal, but this time the unmarshal will use a JSON data format. Sorry, not a JSON, a JXB data format. So I will create an JXB data format in here. Okay, JXB data format, and this one requires a JXB context. So with this context, I need to provide the models that will be used in order to deserialize the data from the stream. So I'm going to use only one class, that will be the person class. So now I have to close the unmarshaller, and then after deserializing the objects, this says that can't throws an JXB exception. So I will just okay, first of all, it's just a context now. So I will throw the exception outside of the method, but nevertheless, after deserializing the object, I will just copy this and output to the same endpoint. Okay, so this is gonna create a JXB context with the instance persona, and this will hold the data format. So this says that the constructor with JSB constant, it's undefined because it imported the wrong data format. So this is not the data format I liked it to use, but rather I will use the one, as you can see here, from JXB. Okay, so that's why it didn't work. And now it says that it can throw JXB exception, so I will throw the exception away from the method. Okay, so in case I want to deserialize an XML, I will use JXB. Now to handle the deserialization from JSON, so in case of direct process JSON. Okay, so in here it should say process JSON. Okay, so now for JSON, I will do the same unmarshal, but in this case, I will use the JSON processor, and I need to specify the JSON library. And in my case, I will use Jackson. As you can see, we can use either JSON, Xstream, or Jackson. So I imported Jackson, and I'm gonna use it. But then, when I deserialize a JSON object, I will just obtain a bunch of key value pairs or an array of objects with properties like key value pairs, or a combination of that. So that's not exactly what I intended to have, but then I would like to convert the body of my message to the person class. And then, of course, I will send the result to the same endpoint to display it. Okay? And now I need to define a consumer for the same endpoint that's gonna, sorry, that should say that will output the result. Okay? So because my object, it's an object, so it has a particular type, I'm not gonna output it, and otherwise it will just do the string on it. So I would like to convert first the body of the object to string, and after converting it, I will output the result. So this will serialize the object in a form that's going to be displayed to the console. Okay, so now, as you can see here, I have first to implement a method to parse the object from a particular format that's not either neither a CSV nor an XML and nor a JSON. And then I'll have to define converters in order to output first to convert my object from a bunch of key value pairs from a hash map to my person class, but also I need to implement a converter that will transform my object from a person to a string, as it will be used here. Okay, so let's enhance the person class. In my person class, I have all the support for XML, this one, and also for JSON and for CSV. But I don't have the support in order to use my class as a converter. What I need to do would be to annotate my class with the converter annotation and define the appropriate method parse that will be used in order to parse a person from what came in the root. In the root here I have a string, so I need to define in my class the method called parse that will get an input of type string and it will return a person. So here I need to define a method to parse a person. So I will just have a static method that has to return what I'm expecting to convert my data to. So it will return a person, let's call it parse, and it will have as input what this root has, which is a string. Okay, so it will have an input of type string. Let's say that I have my values delimited by, let's say I have data and I would like to get the parts from my data by do a split like this. And then I will create a person. Okay, I will create a person, let's call it person. I will call the constructor in order to create my object. And I'm expecting to have two parts. So I will set the first name as being equals to parts of 0. And I will set the last name to be equal with the second part. Sorry, not parts, but parts of 1. And then I will just return the person. Okay? Now, this will define, actually this will implement my converter from a string to a person. But then I also need to say that this method should be used as a converter. First, I put the annotation on the class itself, but I also need to annotate the method. So I'll say this method should be used when searching for a conversion from string to person. Then I need to define a method to format actually a person to a string, because in my route, as you can see here, when I output the object, I'm converting what came in the route itself, which will be of type person, and I will convert this to a string. So this is the same conversion with the same mechanism. So I need to define here a method in order to convert from a person to a string. So I'll define another static method which will return string, and of course normally this should be called format because this is what it does. It will get as input a person and it will return a string. And of course I'm not even bothered to do a string builder, and I will just say the first name equals to person.firstName. I am inside the class, so I don't care about getters. and of course the last name equals to the person last name. Remember, we need to annotate this to be a converter as well. And now we have all the converters. Yep. That's not exactly the last step we need to do in order to implement a custom converter. We need to go to the main resources, and in the main resources we need to create a meta-inf folder. So let's go in here and create a new folder called meta-inf. In this I would have to create a new folder called services. So I will go here and I will create a new folder called services in lowercase. Here I need to create the same structure as the group ID of the artifacts from Camel. So I'll create an org folder which will contain an Apache folder which will have inside a Camel folder. Okay, and inside the Camel folder I will need to create a file. I will create a new file with the name type converter. Okay, so in here I will just put all the packages, each package on a single line, in which Camel should look for converters. So I will go to my person class and I will just copy the package of it. Okay, so now after saving the file, Camel will know at runtime to look inside the meta-inf folder for a folder called services, which should contain the same structure as the group ID of the artifacts of Camel, and inside it should contain a text file called type converter, which will have the name of the package on each line, in which Camel will look at runtime for converters. Now all I need to do, except for running my class, would be of course to create the input files. Okay, now I go to my data folder, and now in here I create a file. Let's call it person.csv. And my person.csv, I will open this with the text editor and not with this one, but with not the system editor but the Eclipse editor, and I will just define, I'll create an object with several properties. So the first one should be the first name, as I said, so I will just use my name for that, my first name and my last name. And now I save the file. Then I create a new one, a new file called person.xml. And then in here I just use the text in order to define a person with the properties and as attributes the first name, okay, and of course the last name. And I have no content for my tag, and then I save the file. Now I create a new one in here, a new file, which should be my person.json file. This one will be an object with some properties. So I'll have a property called first name, and the value for it would be my first name, and the second property called last name, and of course the value for it. Ilie-Némedi, okay. Now I save the file as well. And now I create a new one. Let's call it person.txt. And in here I just create an object like this with my own format. Now when I run my route, my integration context, I will just run it as a Java application. This will start Camel, and in here it found the converters, but it also has some errors. Okay, let's try and see what was the problem. So the problem was when deserializing the object as an XML. Okay, So I do have an issue with the person. Now let's check the input data, my person file. Okay, so I'm missing an equals in here. Okay, so sorry for that. Now let's run the integration again. Of course, that's not the real integration. That's just an example, but nevertheless, it does what it says. Okay, so now after running the integration, I have another issue. Okay, let's try and see what was the problem. I'll just stop it. And it says that there is no available conversion from a type person, and that's right, we forgot to implement something, so that's not possible to convert what was obtained after deserializing the object as a JSON to a person. Yeah, that's right, so we don't have a converter from a hash map to a person, because actually what happens in the background when we deserialize a JSON is that the library will create a JSON object from the string actually, and then we need to convert the result of the deserialization to a person. But actually, because my data contains properties with values, it will create, when deserializing this as JSON, will create actually a hash map. So now I have to provide a converter from a hash map to a person. So I go to my class. Okay, so we forgot to do it. Don't worry, that's fine. But then here I will create a static method which will return a person. Let's call it pass. But this time it will get a map as input. So all the values will be deserialized as string. Okay, so what I do here, of course, I create a new person. Let's call this person. Sorry, I will call the constructor to create it, and then I will set the values. So the first name should be map.get, and the key would be the same as the name of the property that I have in here. So let's get the value of the key with the name first name, and I will set the last name accordingly. So in here I will set the last name to be the value of the last name property. In the end I will just return my person. Okay, that's fine. And now let's run it again. This time we will be more successful. Okay, so as you can see, we still have a problem nevertheless, and you know why. Okay, so we have the same problem because, of course, we forgot to annotate the method with the converter annotation. Of course, I didn't do it on purpose. I just forgot to do it. But it's very important when you learn something to encounter mistakes, to do mistakes, to encounter issues, because you don't remember how to do it step by step. Of course, after doing it once or twice, you will know it by heart. But the problem is, you will remember for sure how to cope with the mistakes you did. So it's okay that we forgot to add the annotation, because this way I hope you will remember not to forget it. Okay, so let's run it again. This time let's see the result. Okay, so in the end, what it doesn't do too much, would be to output the result of deserializing the object in different formats and then converting it to something that it's displayable. Okay, so just as a conclusion, if you want to deserialize objects with Camel, you need to add some dependencies. Okay, so you need to add dependencies to the libraries for each format. In some cases, you will need to add a dependency to a library for the format itself, but as a contract, but also for specific implementations of the library that actually do the formatting. Then you just decide what format to use. That's a normalizer. You normalize from different formats to the same object. That will be the model itself. And in case you need to implement your own type converters that won't be actually used as unmarshallers or marshallers, but rather they will be used as casting converters, which will get a particular type of object from your input, you would have to define a converter class either in your model. That will be the most convenient way because it's attached to your model, but in some cases you will have to implement an utility class for that. And remember, those conversion methods would have to be annotated with the same converter property, annotation. And remember that they will have to get as input the same type of data which is present in your integration route, and they will have to return what you are expecting to get when doing the conversion. Don't forget, it has no value unless you define a converter file in a particular location on the disk in which you need to mention all the packages that should be used to find the converter classes. And in the end, after deserializing the objects, you might need to format the result as a string, which is also a custom conversion from what you deserialized to into the string itself. Okay, so basically this is what we are doing when converting objects with Camel. Thanks for watching.